For this step-by-step, we're going to be making purity seals. And a purity seal is basically two pieces of parchment with a wax seal on top of it. Here in the background, we have our sponge with our water. Basically, the amount of water that leaches into the sponge is the good amount of lubrication that you'll need for your sculpting tools. And as you know, anytime your sculpting tool touches your green stuff, you have to have some lubrication. So basically, I started off with two different sizes of green stuff here, of tubes. And as you know, I basically just eyeballed the sections here. With a size this small, it's generally easy just to eyeball how big you want your parchment to be, which is going to be this larger tube, and then your wax seal, which is this smaller tube here. The tools we're going to be using are from the Big Sculpting Tool set at www.joeorteza.com. And the first tool here is a tool that's similar to the wax sculpting tool number 5, except for it's smaller. It has a halberd end and then a curved rounded spade end. Also, we're going to be using a tool similar to the Games Workshop sculpting tool, which is a bladed spatula with just a point on one end, and then on the other end it's a rounded spade. Also, we're going to be using a straight pick tool, which has just a point. Also, a ball stylus for the wax seal. We're going to be making them pretty simple today. And basically, depending on the size of your wax seal is dependent on what size ball tip you'll want to use. Also, we're going to be using the clay shaper with the chisel point, which is basically flat on both ends. So we've started off here by just rolling off the two tubes of green stuff. Here you can see the larger ball, this is where the parchment, this is going to be the parchment, and then the smaller ball here is going to be the wax seal. So what you want to do, I'm going to do two so that you can have one windswept and one that's straight up and down. So here I've already rolled it into a blood drop, and basically what you do is you get the ball and then you apply pressure to one side so that it tapers into a point. Now with the purity seals that we'll be making, basically we want to stick to the surface, and then later on, once it's cured, we're going to just pick them off and then use our tweezers to apply them to our models. So if I were doing a series or actually a squad of, let's say, of models, I would do as many of these as I can, just the parchment section, and then so that you'd want them all evenly sized, so you don't have any that are too big or too small. So here I'm just using my finger and applying it to the surface. The surface is completely dry, so that it sticks to the surface. Also, here, if you've noticed, there's no liquid on the surface right now. It's nice and just dry so that it doesn't leach underneath my sculpting surface here. So I'm going to lubricate my sculpting tool here, which is the chisel point wax shaper, and I'm just going to go over and level the top off. So it's basically the same thickness throughout. And basically you just want to pull it downwards. I'm making sure my sculpting tool isn't too saturated so it doesn't leach underneath it. And then I'm just going to go pick out my points here. So here now you see it's expanded as I've applied pressure across the top of it. So here's a top view and then the side view. So it still has some thickness to it and it's not completely flattened out. So from here I'm going to get the spatula tool here, the pointed spatula tool, lubricate that just a little bit, remove the excess on my finger, and then this one here I want it windswept. So I'm just going to apply some pressure onto one side so I can create a curve, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side here. Then I'm going to go in with my clay shaper again and basically level that off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make two guidelines, one on each of the parchments using the straight pick. I'm going to lubricate that as well. And this isn't going to go all the way through. This is just so that you have a guideline to follow when you are pressing it. After a while, I think once you've had enough practice, you won't need to draw in the guideline. But for the tutorial purpose, I'm just going to draw them in. If you notice, I'm not using the tool straight up and down, because what will happen is it'll drag your green stuff. It's at a slight angle when I drew it in. And then here you can see one side is actually smaller than the other side where I place the line. So here it's smaller, and then this is the larger end. And basically what it's going to do is it says that this area here, this side here, overlaps this smaller side here. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to get the spatula tool here, remove the excess, and this is a tool that's similar to the Games Workshop sculpting tool, and I'm going to gently just press one side down, and it's going to be the smaller side. So I'm following my guideline, and I'm pressing one side down. I'm going to lubricate my sculpting tool, and then just push one side down. What will happen is as this side is pushed down, the other side will raise up. So I'm going to use my chisel shaper now just to go back in and push that side down. And then here I'm going on the outside and pushing it down. What will happen is this part here that raises up will bubble up a little bit. So you can go ahead and gently just pat that down also. So basically what you've created is one step. So this is the lower step here. And then this up here is the raised step. So I'm just leveling it off right now so that my purity seal won't be bubbly on top. So what happens is you've created a step here and here. So now, by pressing this down along the guideline, you're saying that this part here, which is smaller, is behind this larger area here. So we're going to define that even more. And I'm going to get my smaller Wax 5 tool here, and I'm going to make some cuts. The first cut I'm going to make here on the one going straight up and down is just straight across. And then I'm going to remove my excess. And then straight across here also on the curved one. Now this one here on the curved one, you want it at a slight angle because it's wind swept. Now from here, I'm going to lubricate my sculpting tool again, and then I'm going to make another cut here, and another cut here. I'm going to remove another cut here, and then I'm going to remove the excess right there. So what's happening is now you're not only saying that this smaller part here is behind the larger part because it's recessed and flattened, but also because it's shorter. So now you've defined it even more by saying that this area here is on top of this smaller piece here because it's not only bigger and that it's also raised, but also because this side is now shorter. So I'm going to go back in and just make sure that this area does not lift off. So I'm going to go gently pat that back in and then level that off. Because what happens is as you push here, because green stuff shifts, this part will raise. So I'm going to gently just flatten that out as well. So now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to add some details. So instead of painting text on this, instead of taking the time to paint text, I'm going to get my straight pick here, and I'm just going to make little dots, some closer and some further apart. So that what happens is when you're painting this, you can just throw a wash into this, and then what will happen is you'll have your text. So some of the little dots I'm making here are touching, some are further apart, just to give the illusion of writing on the parchment here. So here I have my guideline and the smaller end behind it. I'm going to go right at my guideline here and then make my little marks behind it, like so. And I'm going to do the same to the one going straight up and down, like so. Now from here, if you want to, you can wait till the very end and then scrape it, because what happens is you'll get this doughy look to it. Basically, you can't scrape until the very end until it's cured, but it'll get rid of that doughy effect. Or if you want to, you can gently just get your clay shaper here and go back in and just level it off just slightly. So now that we have our text on there, what you can do is you can tatter the bottom depending on the size. This is small enough where I won't actually have to cut sections out of it, but if you would like to, if your parchment of your purity seal is too big, you can do that. You can just cut like little triangles out of it, but here I'm just going to make a little mark and then just open it up a little bit like so to create your little tatter. I'm going to tatter this just a little more. I'm making 2 slices, and then you can make little marks like so across the bottom. So here now the parchment section is done, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the wax seal. So here I've made little balls of green stuff. Now as you press on the green stuff, remember it'll expand out. So you don't want it too big or else your wax seal will be too large. So here I'm going to place it so that it's actually slightly below the point of your parchment. If you put it too high, what will happen is when you remove the cured green stuff purity seal, it's going to actually rip off the tip of your wax seal. So from the point here, we want it to go just right below it, so we have good adhesion onto it. So from here, I'm just gently pat the green stuff down with my finger so it sticks pretty well, and then I'm going to lubricate the tool here, which is the chisel wax shaper, and I'm going to just gently level it off so that the ball expands out. Like so. Now if you see the side view here, you'll notice that now it's like a little disc shape versus what it was before in the ball form. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ball stylus, and I'm going to make a little mark here. I've just lubricated it, and I'm gently just expanding my little circle out like so, and I'll do the same here. Start from the middle and gently just make a little circular motions to open it up. Now you don't want it too deep, you want it fairly shallow. I'm going to lubricate that because it's sticking just slightly. And then from here, you don't want it perfectly round, so you can just push in little sides here so it looks more natural. And basically, this is it. And from here, if you'd like, you can see the top view here. And then you can also see the side view here. So even after, once this is cured, you can leave it as is. My preference is I usually get a X-Acto blade or my X-Acto knife and I scrape it. Now when you're scraping it, this is cured, so I'm not actually going to be scraping it, but what will happen is it'll get rid of that, that slight doughy look to it. So what I would do is, as you would do when removing flash lines, you would have it perfectly straight up and down and gently just glide the blade across the surface here, and then you can even turn it and slightly and carefully scrape it this way. Now you can also, here if you look at the tip of my X-Acto blade, it's been broken off. You can carefully just get a pair of pliers and just break the tip off. The reason is when you have a step like this, and then later on in other step-by-steps where we'll talk about it, the reason you don't want a pointed tip is because when you're scraping an area that is stepped like this, without the tip, what will happen is as you scrape it, you won't cut into a nice finished edge like that. And then what will happen is you'll create a nice sharper edge to it. So basically this is the purity seal. So once this is cured and you've scraped it or not scraped it, you can just get your X-Acto blade and carefully, once it's cured and dried, put it underneath and then just pick it off. Okay? Good luck. Thank you very much.